We got some breaking and earth-shattering news right before Thanksgiving, as expected. Judge Curry has declared that Lindsey Halligan was illegally and unconstitutionally appointed to be a U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia or anywhere else, and that the fact that she alone went in to get the indictments of Letitia James, New York Attorney General, and James Comey, the former FBI director, renders their indictments null and void. And she threw out the indictments without prejudice. She threw out Lindsey Halligan as a prosecutor. She threw out the indictments. Now, I'll describe what that means for James Comey. Since the dismissal was without prejudice, can they try, now that the statute of limitations has run, to re-indict him? I don't think so. We're going to cover it here on Legal AF. Two almost identical orders just came out in the last few minutes. I wanted to jump on here with our Legal AF community and tell you all about them. Now, there's still other judges looking at similar issues. Judge Nachmanoff is looking at whether the indictment should be dismissed for vindictive prosecution and for violations of the grand jury process separately. He could dismiss the indictment with prejudice, especially since the statute of limitations, the 5-year limitations for Comey, has run. Now, Letitia James doesn't have a statute of limitations issue, so it's a little different for her. Could they bring back with a new U.S. attorney properly appointed and confirmed by the Senate and indict her again? They could. But again, she's got her own defenses, including evidence that we know exists that says she did nothing wrong and there was no mortgage fraud, which of course a future jury will know about. But the good news, top line good news, is Lindsey Halligan has been declared to be an invalidly appointed U.S. attorney, and everything that flowed from that, her 2 indictments, have been tossed without prejudice. For James Comey, I believe that should end his case because they're out of time to re-indict, with the statute of limitations on perjury having run. For Letitia James, it's a different story, but still a very good decision here. Now, the decisions, which we'll put up on Legal AF Substack, are almost identical, but let me read to you from the one related to Comey. And let me start with sort of deep in the heart of it to get to the heart of the ruling. Let's start with page 20. On page 20, because the how and the procedure behind Lindsey Halligan being appointed is important. There was a U.S. attorney. She resigned on the day of the inauguration for Donald Trump. They appointed Eric Siebert under Section 546. They then fired him or forced him to resign because he wouldn't indict Comey and Letitia James, even though he's a conservative Republican. Then they tried to appoint a new interim U.S. attorney named Lindsey Halligan. The problem with that is, once they only had one opportunity within that 120-day period that the statute allows to appoint one U.S. attorney. It's a single-use ticket for the Department of Justice, and they appointed Eric Siebert. So they tried to argue, no, they allowed to keep renewing the 120 days, and every time they want to fire somebody, just continue to appoint a new person for 120 days and never have to go back to the Senate. See, the Senate has to give advice and consent. You have to nominate and have a permanent appointment confirmed with the Senate. Donald Trump wants to avoid that because he wants to use all these crazily unqualified people to be his prosecutors. So Judge Curry called them out and said, it's a single-use ticket, folks. You only get one opportunity, and you used it on Siebert. You can't bring in Lindsey Halligan. Everything she did is ultra vires, meaning outside the law, and done. Here's what she says on page 20. On page 17. Ms. Halligan was not appointed in a manner consistent with this framework. The 120-day clock began running with Mr. Siebert's appointment on January 21, 2025. When that clock expired on May 21, 2025, so too did the Attorney General's appointment authority. Consequently, I conclude that the Attorney General's attempt to install Ms. Halligan as interim U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia was invalid, and that Ms. Halligan has been unlawfully serving in that role since September 22, 2025. She goes on to say, when an appointment violates the appointments clause from the jump, the actor has exercised power that she did not lawfully possess. An officer must be properly appointed before he can legally act as an officer. In footnote on page 21, and 20. She says on page 20 of her order, Judge Curry, in light of these principles, I conclude that all actions flowing from Ms. Halligan's defective appointment, including securing and signing Mr. Comey's indictment and that of Letitia James, constitute unlawful exercises of executive power that must be set aside. In terms of her remedy, she goes through, she rejects the government's arguments that it's a paperwork error. She rejects the government's arguments that all the actions of Lindsey Halligan in front of the grand jury were sort of ratified by Pam Bondi after the fact. You can't ratify that, which is completely illegal. The judge says, I've already concluded on page 25 that Ms. Halligan's original appointment was invalid and that the Attorney General's attempt to retroactively bestow special attorney status on her was ineffective. She could not have authorized Ms. Halligan, who was not an attorney for the government at the time, to present Mr. Comey's indictment to the grand jury on September 25. The implications of a contrary conclusion, Judge Curry writes, are extraordinary. It would mean the government could send any private citizen off the street, attorney or not, into the grand jury room to secure an indictment as long as the Attorney General gives her approval after the fact. That cannot be the law. Indictment is dismissed without prejudice. And here she says on page 29 to end her order, the power to appoint an interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia under Section 546 during the current vacancy lies with the district court until a U.S. attorney is nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. She's saying this is a split of power under the rule, on the 546. President gets first shot at one interim U.S. attorney. After that, the district court judges in the Eastern District of Virginia pick their replacement. Look for them to try to do that in the next 24 hours or so, certainly before Thanksgiving. This is the reason that Judge Curry was imported in from South Carolina to sit in Virginia by designation because of the potential ethical conflict of having a judge in the Eastern District of Virginia pick this matter and decide on this matter if they were going to ultimately also decide on the replacement for Halligan. So breaking, startling news here. Let me summarize it. Judge Curry, who is solely responsible for whether Lindsey Halligan was improperly, unconstitutionally appointed, has ruled that she was. As a remedy, her indictments of Letitia James and James Comey have been tossed without prejudice, meaning if there's a way to bring them back with a new grand jury. In the case of James Comey, I don't think there is, because there's a statute of limitations bar. They can try to get another grand jury with another prosecutor who's been appointed by the district court judges, not by Donald Trump, unless Donald Trump brings in one in the future, and try to go after Letitia James for mortgage fraud again. But I think the case against James Comey is dead. We'll continue to follow it. I'm glad you're here on Legal AF. There will be updates. There will be an emergency appeal by Donald Trump. There will be the United States Supreme Court perhaps getting involved with all of this over the next few days and over the Thanksgiving weekend. I'm glad you're here. Hit the free subscribe button for this kind of breaking news. You need to be here on Legal AF, on Legal AF Substack as well. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touches Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.